All right. I want to talk a little bit about Death Stranding now that I've completed it. Uh,
How many times do they say strand in the game?
um, I'd say like around somewhere between 10 to 20.
Okay.
That's it?
Yeah, it's not
Um,
that ridiculous.
what?
They say the word chiral like maybe 100 to 150.
Jesus.
Uh,
What
Yeah.
was your final playtime?
my final playtime with a good amount of side content was 68 hours.
Okay, that's less than I thought.
And I
That's more than
lost every single one of those hours the day after I beat the game.
Oh, that's right.
So I
Fucking
am omega depressed because I wanted to platinum it. I might replay it because I liked it that much, but we'll
Willer's
see. We'll see,
PS4
man.
exploded.
It didn't even explode, but I was an idiot. Anyways, Death Stranding is fantastic. I want to open up with that that it's kind of a masterpiece. Not gonna lie.
Just
Um,
throwing that out there.
just throwing it out there. It's kind of fucking amazing. But I want to talk about some of its strengths, and it does have weaknesses. I'm not sure if I would give it a 5 out of 5 yet because of a couple of narrative things that I will talk about a little bit. The problem is, Joe, are you ever finishing this?
I am gonna finish it. I'm literally. The thing is, I had this small TV, and I want to play on my big TV.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right, and as you should because it's gorgeous. The game's
Hmm.
so fucking pretty. Um, Maybe I might ask you to step out for like 5 to 10 minutes near the end,
Okay.
and then I'll just talk about it just to Bradley or something, or just
Big
to
secret.
myself.
That's okay.
But we'll see. So I think a good way to tackle this game and discussing it is going chapter by chapter because each chapter relates to a one of the main characters, and I think you could talk a lot about the game and its structure and its main characters by going chapter by chapter like that. I considered doing a video essay on this, but as I was going through it, I was like, no, if I really get down to it, this is going to be way too big. I might
One
do
day, one day our channel is going to be a video essay channel if we ever get off our ass and feel like doing one.
clearly we would enjoy doing that considering how much we like to talk about shit. But
Yeah.
I might do it on a smaller subsection topic, like maybe just the idea of some of the main themes in Death Stranding, how they relate to the gameplay. But okay, the first character I want to talk about is a character called Fragile,
Okay.
the Chapter 3 primary character. This character is one of my favorites. She basically, so each character in Death Stranding has a deal going on, and I'm gonna explain them to you, Bradley and Joe. You probably got most of them already. None of this would be too spoilery. Um, the character of Fragile. So you know how rain speeds up time in Death Stranding? It's called timefall. Whatever it lands on, it gets sped up. So Fragile's thing is that due to a horrible terrorist attack and a convoluted plot relating to it, everything from her neck to her toe is like old granny body,
Ooh.
and she has a very pretty face, Lea Sedol's face. But you know, she's a butter body kind of thing,
Oh god.
which is really sad. It's beyond just like physical beauty. She also says she doesn't have much to live as a result of it. She also has the power to teleport pretty much anywhere, so that's pretty cool. And that's explained. That's a thing about Death Stranding. Almost everything is really well explained. All the inner mechanics of the world are really well thought out. For example, like the question of why don't people just fly in this post-apocalypse? Well, the clouds have a lot of chiralium, which is this particle that fucks up time and space, which is also the reason why timefall happens. So it all kind of loops back into each other in multiple ways. But so Fragile has this really good cutscene where we actually get to see her backstory. My one knock against that cutscene, it's really well directed. It's really horrifying what she has to go through. But as she's like running through this timefall rain, Kojima just has to get a shot of her ass while he's doing it.
Yeah, boy.
No, Bradley.
Oh wait, she has an old lady booty.
Well, no, that's not the problem, Bradley. The problem is, I mean, it's becoming an old lady booty in real time during the
Okay.
cutscene. But I feel like it took away from it. Like it felt unnecessary.
Yeah, it's
Aside
like
from-
this was supposed to be serious, and we're looking at this girl's ass.
yeah, Kojima's a horn dog, and that's just how it be. The chapter after that, so chapter 3 is really interesting because I feel like that's when the game starts, and I think that's where Joe left off because I think I spent 30 hours on chapter 3 or something like that.
Damn.
You get so into doing the side quests and building the world because I talked about the multiplayer on our last podcast. And yeah, you could just get lost in it. I know people have spent way more time after going to the subreddit. And it's kind of funny because then chapter 4 is like an hour at most, where it's this really intense boss battle against a character called Cliff that I'll talk about later. But he's played by Mads Mikkelsen. You see him in a lot of flashbacks whenever you link up with your BB. And he's got a really good character arc as well. Chapter 5 focuses on a character called Mama, and Mama is played by Margaret Qualley. I'm sure y'all have seen her, but she's in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, Joe.
Oh.
She's Pussyfoot?
It
No, Pussycat, yeah.
Pussycat, yeah.
And her deal is that she got trapped under a bunch of rubble while she was about to go into labor. And then her baby was born as a BT, which is like the ghosts in the game. And because of that, she has like a weird link with the world of the living and the world of the dead. And it's kind of fucked up. But also, so you have a mission where you have to carry Mama to a certain location. And it's really cool because you don't get to carry bodies very often, but it's really tough when you do. And that's around the time of the game where I got into the Snowy Mountains, which gameplay-wise is maybe the most fun and frustrating parts of the game. Frustrating is a weird word to use. It's more like it's so tough and so draining on you as like a player, but it's so rewarding that it's actually the best gameplay in the game at the same time. And there's a bunch of ways that you can make it easier on yourself. But I won't say much about Mama except that some of the mechanics of how her ghost baby works were a little confusing. That's kind of start to become a theme with some of these characters where they have really good backstories and really good interactions with the main character, but they have kind of weird mechanics and stuff that's not really explained. For example, in Chapter 6, you meet Heartman, who's played by Guillermo del Toro, and he's kind of an interesting character throughout the game. Out of everyone, he treats BB like a tool, which is kind of how the world kind of treats BB, but because he has to do a lot of maintenance on your little baby in your little pod, he ends up talking about BB more than other characters, but his character arc involves BB, and it's really good, but his whole deal is that he was not born. He is artificially created from corpses of cadavers and their organs and stem cells and shit like that. So his whole deal is that he has no connections to the world, and he views himself as not having a soul, where the game has a very Egyptian look at like a soul and a body, a ha and a ka, and that comes through in a lot of characters. So his character is one that doesn't have a soul but a body, and Mama is a character that her body is kind of in between the world because of her ghost baby, and her soul is like kind of drifting. After that, though, you focus on probably one of the best characters, or like the most fun to introduce character. You have a character called Heartman, and Heartman's deal is that he only stays alive for 21 minutes before his heart goes out, and then while his heart is out, he searches for his family in the afterlife so he can finally pass on with them.
I remember he was like one of the first things about this game that I like ever heard about.
Right, yeah, he was introduced in a cutscene before the game came out. So every 21 minutes he dies for, I believe, a minute, and then his heart restarts, and that's just how he lives his life. And it's cool because you go to his house and you get to see how he's built his house around this lifestyle. He's really into short movies that are like 20 minutes long, and he's into albums that he can play while he's drifting in and out. And his whole deal is that he more or less the moments where he's alive, he views them as the downtime, and the moments where he's dead, searching for his family, is what really matters to him. So he's really interesting, and the cutscene with him is really funny. That's also around the time of the point of the game where the main plot starts to really come to fruition. A lot of the mysteries in the game start getting revealed in chapters 8 through 14, which is like the back, I'd say, fifth of the game. And then finally, out of all of your supporting characters, these are all characters that support you throughout the quest, but you kind of focus on them chapter by chapter. You get a character called Die Hard Man, and he is so fucking cool. He's maybe my favorite character aside from the main character.
He named himself after his favorite movie.
Of course. And I won't get into his whole deal a lot because he's pretty deep into the game, so it starts getting pretty spoilery at that point. But he has this one cutscene where he acts the shit out of that cutscene. Give this man an Oscar. Give it to the Oscar committee. They're all like 80 years old anyways. They won't be able to tell it's a video game because the graphics are that good, and they'll just give him an Oscar.
Can a video game win an Oscar?
They couldn't, unfortunately, even though his act, like, my god, he really went for it. It was great. Also, he has a cool skeleton mask. It looks sick as fuck. Those are all your main characters, and as the game progresses, like, you're visiting different areas as you're learning more about these characters, and each kind of chapter has you doing missions mostly for them, and it's a good way to just kind of move the game along while moving the plot along. I thought the pacing was pretty good. But then, like, the last 2 or 3 chapters focus on the main antagonist called Higgs, which is played by Troy Baker. He's, so Higgs is an interesting case where he's super hammy and super fun, but he's not deep pretty much at all. He's a very one-note villain, but he's one of those one-note villains that are just kind of fun to witness. Like, you could see him in One Piece in the early stages and be like, yeah, you're a Don Krieg Arlong type. But even then, like, he has less than them. But the thing with him is that you get to learn a lot more about him in the post-game, which I guess I won't get to learn now that I've lost my file, but he has a pretty tragic past. You kind of get to understand why he did the things he did. The boss fights in this game, that would be a good time to talk about them. They're actually really cool. Some of the reviews were like, I didn't really like the boss fights, but I feel like those people didn't really know how to play the game very well. I don't know. I had a lot of fun. I beat the shit out of him with boxes by throwing them at his face. It was very enjoyable. And then you have like a straight up like fighting game mini game against him, and it completely threw me for a loop, but it was very fun. And then you get to the final like 2 chapters where the shit really hits the fan. And this might be where the narrative most suffers in not explaining its own mechanics. I didn't talk about it with Heartman, but it's never really well explained why Heartman dies every 21 minutes. There's a bit of an explanation, but it's not as robust as everything. Like the world building is really robust and really well explained, but some of the character quirks aren't. And the final few antagonists, you get into this really long cutscene where they explain the main antagonist's motives, and you understand it, but there's just so much going on where you also get confused. At the same time, though, when I stepped away from it and I had time to reflect on it, I thought it was really interesting, and it was kind of, you have to make a tragic choice near the end of the game, and I thought it was well set up, but it was executed in a way where you were just overwhelmed with information at the time, where you don't even really understand what choice you're making, and I only really got it after I reflected on it. So that might be a bit of a weakness, where like there's just such an information overload near the end of the game. Thematically, the game does some really cool gameplay stuff near the end too, where like touching on the topic of being stranded, in the sense where you're left alone for a long time, and dealing with the a big theme of the game that really starts to shape up near the end is the concept of extinction, and what does it mean? How are extinction events originated? Because you might know that Earth has had 5 extinction events or major ones throughout the game, and to show a little bit of this game's hand, the main plot of this game is exploring the 6th major extinction, the extinction of humanity, and what all that means, the morality of it, if there is any, and how it's formed, how are people going to get past it, etc., etc. The character I left to talk about last, before I kind of wrap up my final thoughts, is Sam himself, the main character. He's really good, and it's kind of understated because in the beginning of the game, Sam doesn't talk very much, and there's a reason for it. He has a fear of being touched, or fear of being close to people, which is kind of why he's standoffish, and his whole character kind of symbolizes isolationism. So the game's theme is to connect the world and connect America, and that's how we can beat this apocalypse, by getting us all connected, getting the flow of information back, delivering goods from people to people to grow bonds. But the person they tasked for this mission is a person who fundamentally does not believe in this idea of bonds, and thinks that connecting a country is just going to fall apart because connecting a country in the past has fallen apart in this world, so he sees no reason why this will be any different. And as you go through your journey, he starts to really connect with, one, his BB, which is very sweet, and then he also starts to connect with the characters that are helping you out and stuff like that. But I feel like the game ends on a really somber tone with Sam, and I really liked it because characters don't always make a whole 180 change at the end of their story, and I think that's good.
Yeah, I kind of like that too.
It's a lot to change the fundamental nature of a character, and even going through this big journey, there's some parts of Sam that haven't changed, and the game kind of critiques itself near the end, where Joe, you can stop listening for a little bit if you want. I won't go too deep in spoilers, but just giving you a little warning.
Yeah, like, just on what you were saying, like, before we get into like the real meat of it, I really like whenever there are character arcs like this, that a character arc doesn't have to go all the way in one direction. Like, you know, a bad person doesn't have to go all the way good, a good person doesn't have to go all the way bad. A character arc can kind of be lateral, where an aspect of that person changes.
Yeah, even
And maybe
even
it
like
doesn't
a
make them better or worse, but it's something different about them.
even a 5% change in one direction for a character that's been static for so long, I think is a big personal growth, you know?
Yeah.
All right, Joe, I hope you're gone because I'm going to get into it. So, as you're connecting the world, the game fuels you with a currency called likes. It's kind of an EXP system where all your stuff can be liked by other players, and characters in the game will give you likes for doing missions. So there's this whole kind of critique on social media and how we use it. It's kind of weird because Metal Gear Solid 2, which is also a Kojima game, really criticizes the age of the internet, and it feels like he's more or less embraced it in this game by embracing the system of likes. But the game makes a point near the end that maybe these bonds that Sam made while connecting the world and connecting them to each other, sure, he increased their connections with each other and their lives are better for it, but maybe the game poses the idea that those connections weren't real connections to him. As someone who's so fundamentally an isolationist, it's like, yeah, I helped other people, but it doesn't change how I feel about this whole connection thing. And even those 5 characters I brought up earlier in the discussion, Sam genuinely connects with them all at some point in the game, but at the end of the day, he made one true connection in the game, which is with his BB.
Hey.
And I think he values that connection. And it's important to say that at this point of the game, Sam has lost everything he believed in, basically. Where the catalyst for you going in your journey is to save your sister. And as it turns out, she is the extinction entity, which is, she's the, every once in a generation, every once in a while, an entity will be born that is, they cannot die, they cannot pass on to the afterlife, and that is the sign of the world ending, and they are harbingers to the world ending. And you more or less are able, because now it's a human, there's a bit more agency in a human than, say, a woolly mammoth that was connected to the other side in that way, that was an extinction entity of that time. So a human's able to prolong it, but the idea is you can't prolong the extinction forever. So you kind of have to leave your sister behind, and she has to kind of just be alone for as long as it takes for the extinction to actually happen. And it's inevitable that it will. So she could be alone for thousands of years, and you just have to leave her alone, which is very heartbreaking. So the one big connection that he had when he started this mission, he has to leave them alone for potentially eternity as far as humans are concerned. So he's kind of broken up about it, which is very fair. So he has to end up leaving all these people that he made connections with throughout the game. All these people, that all the minor characters you were helping, they send you a ton of emails. It's like, oh man, Sam, you changed my life, man. I don't know what we would have done without you. But at the end of the day, all those likes, all those emails they give you, they weren't enough to change Sam. And he, at the end of the day, he has one true connection, and he's afraid of really bonding with those other 5 characters because he knows one day he might lose them. And it's just kind of sad. It's a sad way to end the game. But also I feel like it's very supported by the events of the story, why it ended that way. And, I mean, there could be a sequel. There very much is room for it. So I hope there is, because Sam is a really cool character. And a part of that is, so where he's afraid of being touched, so any cutscene where people get near him, he kind of like pussies out and like becomes really small and submissive and just kind of backs away from any encounter. So even so fragile, and earlier in the game, she's talking close to you, and Sam is just like cowering away from her just because she's getting close. It's like, dude, she has the body of a grandma, and he's terrified of her. And I think that's a really cool character trait to wrap up this idea of his. And it's just kind of reflected in all of that. All those themes are reflected through gameplay. When he's alone, you can talk to yourself while you're alone out while hiking, and he kind of is more playful when he's by himself. When he's in the room alone, he does all sorts of goofy shit, and you get to play Norman Reedus Simulator. So you get this real idea that this man is much more comfortable being alone, and the game is about him cracking out of his shell, maybe 5%. And that's Stranding.
How many years was this game in development?
3.5 years or so, maybe less. Which is really good, actually, when you think about it.
Kojima probably working on something else right now.
He said he wanted to do a movie next, which
What?
I don't trust. I really like the story of this game, give or take a couple of elements. I do not trust him to make a film. I don't know why. I feel like it'd be ridiculous. He's really good at tying gameplay to the story, and I feel like without that hook, I wonder if he can really get us.
Yeah, it's like if he's good with games, keep making games.
I don't know. He makes really good story games. But there's so much content in this game, like,
I mean,
and it's so polished, dude. There are so many very small details of polish that I could go on and on and on for hours, and they made it that fast. So good on Kojima. He did very good with this. That's all I really had to get off my chest on the story. The gameplay was phenomenal. Ironically, people were like, "What is this game? It's just a walking simulator." The gameplay is straight 5 out of 5. Really like the story as well. Not perfect. Not his best script. His best scripts would be MGS 2 and 3, which I would love to play with you at some point, because you need to experience some of those games because they're very much up your alley with some of the story themes, in my opinion. But That's what I got.
You heard it here first.
I wonder how we get Joe back. I don't know.
We go. I know. You see. Somehow the world will change for me.
Keep going, bro.